Origin Gents, on to reaction. This is Otto von Bismarck, Germany, Extra History Part 6. I think this is the last part of this series, I guess. Germany, so it makes sense. He's gonna, found the modern Germany that we know of. Yeah, this was the channel extra credits. You would think that capturing the Emperor of France would be the end of the war. Yeah, Napoleon III. He is not like the original Napoleon, is he? But no. Who could Bismarck negotiate with? Eventually, he forced an interim government to cave to his demands, and at the same time convinced the rest of the German states to unite with Prussia. Yeah. This series has been awesome so far because I didn't know who Bismarck was before I started reacting this video. Obviously, somebody in the comments always said that react to this series. Obviously, the name came up, but I didn't know who that was. But then I realized, wait a minute, the modern Germany that we know of, this is the guy who's the reason behind it. I'm like, damn. And then I saw the 5 parts of this series, and I realized how brilliant this guy was. He has some volatile personality, but still, it's really, I guess, awesome to see how he works. He's a crammer, apparently. He just, takes books over books and just, gain all the knowledge. That's a power in its own self. You can literally learn anything like that. Learn about any field that you had no idea about before. So that's a powerful tool. And he has, he had the drive to do things. He wanted to do something and he stuck to it, which was awesome. Yeah, remember people, if you like my reaction, don't forget to like and subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more. Check out the reaction, there's a link in the description with all of my videos. Check out the cast for the playlists like History, Internet Historian, CGB Grey, Overly Sarcastic Production, Oversimplified, and yeah, let's watch this one.
The Prussian army reigned victorious. 250,000 men had surrendered to them, and the French emperor was their prisoner. It was time to make peace. There was only one problem.
Yeah, Moltke. This is a classic diplomat and military general type of thing, right? Bismarck is a diplomat, so he wants to negotiate peace, while Moltke is a military general. He's like, screw it, let's take Paris.
You see, capturing an emperor sounds great. It sounds like the thing that happens when you win. But when the emperor is the state, and he's also your prisoner, who do you negotiate with?
Oh, yeah.
This was the problem Bismarck was facing. Too much winning. He wanted to make peace, but they had won so much that he couldn't figure.
I mean, if you're, presidents and prime ministers, there's always somebody who can, take their place when they are not there, I guess. But if you have the emperor, unless he abdicates, I mean, you can negotiate with somebody else.
Out who to make peace with. So when the news reached Paris on September 2nd, 1870, one of the remaining generals and a few French statesmen declared themselves the government, which they cleverly named the Government of National Defense. Of course, the emperor was technically still alive and hadn't ever abdicated, which was a complication. Yeah. Also, they hadn't been elected, so where did their legitimacy come from? Well, everybody basically agreed nowhere. This slapdash government maintained some semblance of control by delivering strong speeches about how France wouldn't give up an inch of territory, to which Bismarck responded, Alsace and Lorraine, please. Negotiations with this pseudo-government quickly fell apart. Moltke was pretty stoked.
I mean, you just get your ass kicked by, Prussia, basically. Your emperor is in there, they captured your emperor, basically. It's their prisoner. So now you're gonna say we're not gonna give up any of the place. You are not in really, position to demand things like that.
This meant he would get to march on Paris after all. As the Prussians approached the French capital, the Government of National Defense recalled all of France's armed forces from their colonies, their holdings in Italy, and summoned them to the defense of the homeland. Soon they had a formidable force at Paris, at least on paper, and they began to dig in. But Moltke simply surrounded the capital and laid siege to it. One of the main members of the Government of National Defense pieced out via air balloon to see if he could raise an army in Loire. Everybody else stayed put, defenses raised, just waiting for Moltke to try to storm the city. Moltke had no intention of doing something so blindingly wasteful, though. Instead, he planned to simply let Paris starve and wait them out.
Julius Caesar, tactics here. This is awesome. I mean, yeah, you could just do that. Why not? It works, all the time, I guess. Just starve them.
While the rest of Germany's forces patrolled France, crushing whatever other armies the French put in the field.
That's the issue. You see, throughout the history, whenever, some force marches to some country or some place, some city, whatever, and they just fortify themselves inside, yeah, that's not going to work if they're just going to cut off your, supply chain and just starve you. Sooner or later, you have to do something. You can't just stay inside.
Bismarck argued that they should shell the city, something that Moltke and the general staff felt was inhumane, against the rules of war and...
In the last video, I thought Moltke is that more military general type of mentality who wanted to march to Paris. He was the radical one. While Bismarck is the more sensible diplomat who just wanted to, I guess, talk about peace and whatever. But now here, Bismarck wanna just, shell the city with civilians in it, while Moltke is the one who's saying, that's inhumane, man. Of course, Bismarck is the, I guess, bit of volatile madman. That's one of his personality, I guess.
Probably ineffective anyway. But as time wore on, Wilhelm got impatient with the rising costs of this siege and ordered Moltke to listen to Bismarck. There is much debate about how much effect the guns had, and whether it was the shelling or just the starvation that led to surrender, but at last, the Government of National Defense signed an armistice. During these peace negotiations, the representative of the Government of National Defense pleaded with Bismarck, saying that if Paris acceded to all demands, it would cause a socialist revolution. Bismarck coolly replied, "Then I recommend provoking an uprising now while you still have an army to crush it." Outplayed at every turn, the Government of National Defense gave Bismarck basically everything he wanted. He got Alsace and Lorraine with nearly 1,700 villages and towns, adding 1.5 million new souls to the German Empire. He got 5 billion francs in gold to be paid as indemnity, and Prussian troops would be staying in France until that was paid, just in case some real French government came along and tried to go back on their deal. Oh, and also, Bismarck got a German empire. More specifically, he forced the French to officially acknowledge Wilhelm as Kaiser, or Emperor, of Germany, the last real step in the unification process.
Wait a minute, why does it matter if French accepts him as, emperor? Shouldn't the German states, which he's trying to unify, has to acknowledge him as the emperor? That should matter. Why does French accepting him matters?
Back when the war first started, the southern German states, the last holdouts, had sort of been absorbed into this growing entity which Bismarck had been putting together. During the war, citizens of Baden or Bavaria or Württemberg had fought side by side with Prussians. It had given them a sense of unity and brotherhood that eclipsed their regional differences, made them an army of Germans fighting together. So now, as the war wound to a close, after experiencing such a great victory through cooperation, these states all voted to become part of something greater.
Man, look at that shit. Bismarck is, so clever, isn't he? He just like, how to unify all German states? I guess let's go to war with another big nation. And basically take all of them with us in one allied force, and when we win decisively, they can see how it's awesome to I guess work together and be one nation. And it worked. This is ridiculous. When he saw a vision of unified Germany, he literally played things like a chess, and he everything worked out the way he wanted in the end, and Germany became, look at that, one state, one nation,
called the German Empire. Finally, in a scene full of spectacle and drama, on January 18th, 1871, the leading military commanders declared Wilhelm Kaiser in the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles. And so the glory of war and the pomp and circumstance of imperial dignity played out. Now all that was left was creating a constitution, which Bismarck expedited by convincing the newly formed German Empire to simply adopt most of northern Germany's previous constitution. But with one interesting proviso. All ministries were under the office of Chancellor, and the Chancellor could propose legislation or bring things to debate in any of the parliamentary houses. But the chancellorship itself was granted at the direct pleasure of the king. No other body could remove a chancellor or appoint one. Coincidentally, Bismarck just so happened to be the Chancellor of Germany. But even with this broad power over his newly...
I mean, that's not surprising since his view on monarchy, we already know that. So, trying to create a chain of command where the king is the main power, under him Chancellor is the main power, and under him all the other government bodies, comes under him. I mean, that structure makes sense, knowing how he thinks about the monarchy and how government should be.
formed empire, even now that he was finally ascendant in Germany and Europe at large, Bismarck now faced a challenge that he had never truly had to deal with before.
Oh.
The challenge of governing. Most of Bismarck's life had been focused on unification, on expansion, and on foreign policy. He'd never before really had to focus on questions of domestic policy for Germany. A new Germany, one sewn together out of disparate people of different backgrounds and different faiths. And here perhaps would be—
Oh yeah, that's the case with lots of people, lots of leaders throughout the history. Like, they are not so good at governing, so what they do is they constantly, I guess, go to wars, try to acquire more places, and do just, I guess, things outside rather than taking care of domestic issues. They start war, so they're like, oh, we are at war, this is more important than, I guess, domestic issues. They try to avoid shit like that. So yeah, I mean, Bismarck's whole vision was about, I guess, gaining more areas, taking other nations and unite one in, create a German nations, go to war with Austria, France, and everywhere. And that was his goal. Now see, that has happened. Like, okay, you got what you wanted, and now what? Yeah, govern, I guess, go with all the local issues, domestic issues. I mean, just because he's brilliant and, brilliant plan maker or whatever and doing all these things doesn't mean he's going to be brilliant, I guess, governing, domestic issues.
Be his greatest challenge, because now he had to ensure the continued meteoric rise of this new German empire, while at the same time fending off the jealousies of Europe's existing great powers, so that they didn't band together and crush this fledgling nation. This Herculean effort would take him the rest of his life, and for all of its difficulties, would be the triumph of his foreign policy and his political philosophy of revolutionary conservatism. But if Bismarck had one great failing, one true tragedy to his life, it would be that he could not envision a world without Bismarck, at least not until it was far too late. And so all of this effort, all of this work he did to ensure a strong but peaceful future for Germany would wash away in other leaders' hands, feeding directly into the looming—
Oh yeah. I mean, apparently he was good at governing, apparently. He was good at domestic issues. I mean, of course he was. I mean, he wasn't much of a politician before, but then he decided to become one, and then he made things happen like this. So obviously he's great at learning things. So he's going to learn how to govern under created nation now, how to defend it, how to make sure that people don't band together and uprisings don't happen and things like that. So he did all that shit. But yeah, I mean, whatever things that he put in place, whatever contingencies he put in place to ensure that Germany stays strong, I guess all revolved around him. And when he's gone, whoever is left now obviously is not going to be as brilliant as him. So chain of command and everything's going to fall apart, because decisions are going to be made by somebody who doesn't understand all this, doesn't understand the system that Bismarck created. And that is what happened in World War I. Imagine if Bismarck was still there in World War I. I'm pretty sure he could have avoided whole issues like this.
Catastrophes of 1914. But that's a story for another time.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure if Bismarck was still alive during World War I, he would have made sure that World War I doesn't happen, since he had this foresight to see things before. I mean, he predicted World War I when he died. In just, I guess 2 decades or so, he predicted that there's going to be issue here and there, and everything happened the way he said it, give or take few months, and World War I started. So yeah, man, Bismarck was such a brilliant guy, right? I mean, who else can you think of that was that great of a political mind? I mean, I know all the military generals, big names like Napoleon, Caesar, but who's like Bismarck, the brilliant mind like that, who played things like this, created all this situation that worked in his favor, and his vision came true like this because he made it true. Yeah. Alright people, that was the series Otto von Bismarck by Extra Credits. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe, and I guess if you want me to react to any other video from this channel or any other channel, comment down, and I'll see you next time.